Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. On today's episode, we have a really special episode that I think will be a lot of fun. Talking to my good friend Tom Wozniak, an instructor at MATC, Madison College, their diesel department. I've known Tom for a long time. But what makes this episode extra special and really cool is that we're joined by a couple of the students that are already in the diesel program, enrolled in the diesel program, experiencing it firsthand, and can tell us all of the truths about Tom, right? The two students that are joining us are Jacob Breunig and Max Richard. Good afternoon, guys. How are you? Good. So I want to start off by, we've talked to Tom several times in different content that we've done over the years. So Jacob and Max, we're going to start with the two of you, learn a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into a whole bunch of different things. But Jacob, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Jacob Breunig. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. I went to Columbus High School, and then I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 as a motor transport operator. When I got back home, I went back into glazing like I was doing before I left, but then that field kind of closed out a little bit, and I got laid off for just seasonal relief. So I needed somewhere new to go, and I decided to keep working with heavy-duty equipment. And I rolled into my next job as a diesel technician at Waste Management and decided that I'd try a little bit harder at this one and actually go to school and learn how to do it right.
How important was that life experience before you came back to school?
Oh, I would say it's incredible. It made it so much easier to catch up with school once I got back in. Instead of just rolling in and taking care of the academics, you can actually have real world application for it. And that really helps when you're trying to learn new subjects.
Yeah, I think it helps with maturity level, and just maybe you go into it with a different mindset than if you go directly when you're 18. Just maybe helps you get some clarity on really what you want to do with your life. So look forward to diving even further into that. Max, very familiar with your family, who you didn't have a choice but to be in this industry. But tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at school at Madison College there.
Alrighty, yeah. Well, I'm 20 years old. Started here last year. You're right, absolutely right. My family was definitely a huge factor in this. We own a shop down in the southwest side of Wisconsin. I worked there probably at least 7-8 years. I've been around trucks most of that time. I love being around them. It's incredible. And I got interested in this school because my grandpa actually went here, and also my father. And they said nothing but nice things about it. So I knew this is the place to be.
And your dad is still very involved with the school, right?
Yes, absolutely. He's on the advisory board for this program, and yeah, absolutely.
He's I've known him for several years, and we've been on the advisory committee together for a long time. Tom, give us a little kind of synopsis of the two of these guys. Give us a little background on what you see with the two of them. Different backgrounds coming to you. What are their strengths? What do they bring to the program?
All right. So with these two here, Jacob being a returning adult student, that's kind of how we would classify Jacob, as coming back into college or into a program here after having, like you said, life experiences and stuff. And Max coming right out of high school and joining our program here. Both of these students here are exceptional students. I was very happy to have them as first-year students in the electrical class over there. Really got to know them very well. Put a couple challenges to these particular students early in class, and both of them really kind of gravitated to that. Jacob, being the returning adult, has that maturity level. that definitely helps in not only in the classes, but actually helps within the class because uh, with his maturity there, he kind of takes the class by a lead and kind of helps show the class that, hey, this is what we really need out of life, more so than just turning a wrench. You got to be able to communicate, you got to be able to listen, you got to be able to handle things under stress. And one of the things that Jacob has done is really taken Max under his wing and really kind of helped with Max and shown through school. Now, Max coming in, of course, Max got the experience. His father was, a student here. His grandfather was a student here. And so, and both of them throughout the years were very, very involved in the advisory committee, through for both of our programs here. And of course, we're looking forward to when uh, Max goes back, and one day he will actually be running the shop, as the succession goes, and they can see he's kind of excited about that, and would really be excited to have Max sit on our advisory committee here. But both of these young individuals here, fantastic to work with, and one of the things that I was very happy about is that I brought up an opportunity for them. And I know we'll probably talk about Skills USA here in a little while, but early when they were here as first year students, we were short on state officers for Skills USA. And I posed it to both of these individuals. I said, hey, here's an opportunity. You can get some leadership training. You get some opportunities to meet fantastic people in our industry, as well as getting opportunities not only in our industry, but meeting bigwigs I don't want to say bigwigs, but meeting the main players in our OEMs. Our Caterpillars, our Cummins, Penske's, things of that nature. And both of these two accepted that opportunity, became officers in the fall of last year, and continue on being officers. Jacob over here is our state president, and Max over here is our state parliamentarian, helping run and guide our organization. So not only are they, here as students and really doing well as students, but they're taking that extra step outside of being a technician and bettering themselves for the future of being future leaders. Again, Max hopefully one day he'll be running the business, and Jacob, so one day I'm assuming that he's going to be wanting to run a shop. So and these are nice steps towards that.
Tom, how important is it to have students such as Jacob and Max to kind of be the anchors to the program, the ones that really show the other students this is how we do things. We do things a certain way. And with having students with the maturity level of these two, have to assume that's a pretty important thing with a program.
Well, it is, because usually when when I went to school here too, I mean, my friends, my closest friends are still these, the classmates that I had when I graduated out of here back in the late 80s. So I still keep in contact with those people all the time, and they're still my closest friends. When you're close knit in a group like that, and you see the same people day in and day out, not only do they learn from each other, but they, whether it's good habits or bad habits, they learn those. And when you have these mature people like Jake and Max in there, they teach those, hey, this is the good habits that we should be learning. We are being professionals here. We need to actually show, how to be a professional, not only at work, but also out of work. In what we'd call our upstairs classes too. How do we portray ourselves? Because not only are we representing ourselves when we are, in our arts and science classes, but we're representing the program, we're representing this industry. And, lead by example is what they do. And that's great, because I know a lot of the students within within that classroom that they're in right now come to these two and, hey, ask them questions and really appreciate that answer. And especially, you can hear it from your instructor all the time. And everybody has this, this notion that, okay, yeah, he's just an old guy. Don't worry about it. You don't have to listen to him. But when that information comes from your peer, it's kind of taken a little bit to heart a little bit more.
Jacob, how important is that leader mentality or that leadership mentality for you within the classroom, right? I think you probably, with that life experience, are able to set the tone for a lot of these younger people that are coming into the program. Do you look at yourself as a leader within the program, or give me an idea of what your thought process is there?
So for the program, I would say that I could be a leader. It's not like I'm taking charge of the class and making sure that they do everything they're supposed to, but if we have a task to do and the other people in the class don't really quite understand what they're supposed to be doing, they'll come up to me or Max and they will find that kind of guidance to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, especially starting second year. First year is a lot more guided and there's a lot more help from the instructor to know what you're supposed to do, what steps are which. And then when you move into second year, it's a lot more of you get your task, you go out there and figure out how to do it on your own using the materials that the college provides. And sometimes some people just don't quite understand. They get lost. They think that they're done. And it really helps to have that kind of mentorship that they can look to another person and be like, this is the next step. This is where you go. This isn't exactly the answer, but this is how you get to it.
Max, you grew up in a shop. You have a similar background to what I had growing up, right? Growing up in a shop, coincidentally in Southwest Wisconsin, not too far from where you're at, right? And was it different coming into the school and maybe adjusting your approach there a little bit too? As Jacob had mentioned, you are one of the leaders in the classroom as well. Maybe from working in a shop, and if you're working for your family, oftentimes you maybe feel like your opinion isn't heard, or that you're maybe just trying to please everybody, right? But when you go into that environment that isn't your family shop, you're in the school. Do you think it's kind of made you mature a little bit in that leadership side?
Yeah, I think so. Starting the program off, I know that I have a little bit of an incline compared to other people, but I figured other people would be in the same boat as well. Um, excuse me. Uh, yeah, different atmosphere, definitely. Um, Maturity has definitely been a plus increase. And also working in a different place up here in Madison, a dealership, Wisconsin Kenworth, definitely a different atmosphere and something I was not used to. Being in a family-owned business for that long, it's just the leadership and help with other technicians, and even having different layers of leadership you got to ask for. It's just super different, and I could see how some people may think might not be for them, or if they enjoy it a lot more than other types of shops like fleets or family owner dealerships. It's definitely a lot of variety that you can ask for, and I'm just happy for the education and the broad availability around here.
I think it's really smart on your part and your family's part to send you somewhere else to work, right? And I say that to a lot of people. Jacob, I see you're wearing an Alliant Power shirt. I had worked there in a prior life, and I had learned that from them, actually, that a lot of times the best way to learn the industry is to get out of your comfort zone, go to a different shop, learn how other shops do it, and really be able to just see something different and learn from different people. And I think, Max, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing you've learned stuff just from working in a different atmosphere, different environment in a different shop.
Absolutely. There's obviously different tools and obviously different ways of doing things. Obviously, at a dealership, there's you have to look out for a lot more things because there's warranty, there's recalls, there's something that fleets and family or private shops don't have that OEMs and manufacturers have to look to, because mostly that's where dealerships lay.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Now, registration is now open for our 4th annual Technician National event. Technician National is a one-day virtual event that brings together technicians, shop owners, and managers, fixed ops directors, and HR professionals to discuss how we can work together to promote and improve technician careers. This year's theme, Treating Technicians Like an Asset, Not an Expense, is about making people your priority. It's completely free to attend, but you must register. As an added bonus, everyone who registers will receive the session recordings after the event. You can register at wrenchway.com/events/techmission. Link is in the show notes. Jacob, you're working in a shop currently, correct?
Yeah, right now I'm working at a fleet shop. It's waste management down on Todd Drive. And the things that I'm learning at school are definitely different than what I'm learning at work. So at work, I might learn the functional way to change out these components on the parts. But at school, they're teaching me what I need to look out for when I'm doing these jobs, or what additional parts are needed, or what types of processes need to be taken care of and actually paid attention to. Where at work, it's more the truck runs, the truck gets on the road, it can do its job, but there's still that emphasis of needing to know your job. And I think the point that you were raising earlier with the Max getting that experience from a different shop is really particular to our industry. It's strange to see in the diesel and just the maintenance industry, companies are so okay with technicians moving around to different shops, getting different experiences. They're not going to look down on that technician for wanting a different job, because they know eventually they'll either stay in the industry or they might even try to come back.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point there. What you learn in school can oftentimes not actually translate to real world experience for a while, right? Like if you're in and you're working in a specific sector, maybe it's fuel injection, maybe you're doing something along those lines, but at work you're not quite doing that yet. Is it challenging to learn something and then maybe have a gap between when you learn it to when you're actually doing it in the shop?
Oh yeah. So that gap, it makes it a big problem for me, but I know that I've done it in the past and the resources are out there. So right now might be working on electronic control systems. Waste management doesn't really do too much with that unless there's a specific code acting up. So I don't get a lot of experience as much as I did, say, electrical class when it was lighting issues, but I still get some of that, and I know how to use the service information when those problems come up. So it's more, I like the college's way that they go about these problems is that they're not teaching you how to fix every individual sensor. They're teaching you how to just find the information to be able to do the jobs.
That's a great point. Tom, would love to get your input and advice here for maybe that student that's listening out there, or even other instructors that are listening, about how you take the theory and match that to application when they're in a shop. You've been around it for a long time now. Being able to remember the theory side and then apply that once you're in a shop. Any advice for young techs that are out there that are trying to make that transition as we speak?
Well, I think we always keep, that KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid, is what we're going to really do here. It's basic troubleshooting. I mean, I tell our class all the time, it's basic troubleshooting. You're trying to eliminate what you know is good. And that's what you're doing. And by doing that, there's certain processes that you're doing, trying to eliminate that, those pieces and parts that are not causing the issue to it. And we're giving them a basic theory of, like with these two right now, they're in electronic control systems. We're giving them a basic theory of analog sensors. We're giving them a basic theory of digital sensors. We're giving you a basic theory of what that information is coming into the electronic control system. We're breaking things down into a very simplified way. So when a fault code comes up, or even a drivability complaint, a no-code drivability complaint comes up, that they can go through a very simple process and determine, by a process of elimination, determine down to 1, 2, 3 maybe things, to where now I can actually go through and do some troubleshooting and testing to find out, is it going to either be a sensor or an actuator? Is it going to be the harness, or is it going to be the controller? And that's what we're giving them. We're giving them real world applications. And we're not just saying, that Caterpillar uses these sensors and this is how it works, or Cummins uses these sensors and this is how it works. We're using it in a generalized way. So whether they're on an electronic engine, or whether they're on an ABS system, or whether they're on a chassis system, or whether they're in a transmission, or whatever that all of this type of knowledge is relatable to where they could go in any of those particular systems, understand that a two-wire temp sensor on an engine is the same thing as a two-wire temp sensor on a transmission. It's going to troubleshoot the same, and still go through the process and, again, eliminate all of those components that we know are good and get down to the root cause of the actual issue. And I think that's what that Max and Jake here are trying to say, is that, even though I may not do it every single day, we're given a process. And through these processes over here, I can do that elimination and come out with the best possible root cause of the problem. And now it's going out there and fixing that root cause of the problem.
One thing I give you a lot of credit for, Tom, is your ability to simplify things. And I had the fortune of sitting through a lot of your classes when you were teaching classes for Bobcat, and I was a Bobcat rep. And you had a way of there was something electrically that I was struggling from a conceptual side, where I in my brain it just wasn't connecting the dots. And I remember sitting through one of your classes, and the way you explained it just kind of made that click. And I think it was because you broke it down to simple parts and really made it really easy to understand. Whereas I've sat in other trainings or in school and had teachers that maybe made it a little too complex or tried to make it seem a little too intimidating. And I give you a lot of credit for that. What do you, in your mind, what does it come down to in terms of making that complex system simple? Because you do have a really, really good way of making that happen.
Well, if you're looking at an electronic system like that, there's only three main components. You're going to have your input or output components, so it's going to be sensors or actuators. You have a harness that connects those two to the controller. One of those three are going to give you the fault. It's your choice to figure out which of the three. And by doing simplified tests, and breaking things down point by point by point, connector by connector by connector, circuit by circuit by circuit, and breaking it down, you're going to be able to say, you know what, I know it's in the harness, I know it's circuit number such and such, and I know it's between connector this and connector that. I don't know where it is in the harness, but at least I know it's that part. And you can break that system down and actually go through by doing the proper processes. And I know that, people might be listening to this and say, well, that's, you're making it way too simple. But in reality, that's what it is. It's either going to be the controller, it's going to be the harness and connectors, or it's going to be the sensors or actuators. One of those three in that electronic control system, whether it's for a transmission, whether it's for a Bobcat, piece of equipment, whether it's for, an engine. One of those three is giving you the fault. Which of the three is it? And that's what you're trying to determine. Now, when you start getting into intermittence and when you start getting into no code, those are a little bit more challenging. But an actual true fault, that is the easy part about, going out and fixing, or not fixing, but going out and diagnosing that, because I have a place to start. And a lot of the things too, we had talked about this before, is multiple faults. You get multiple faults occurring at the same time right now. Well, now one of the things you're looking at, instead of breaking it down, I got to troubleshoot this fault, I got to troubleshoot this fault, I got to troubleshoot this fault. Now I break it down and say, what's common with all of them? If all of them are occurring right now and they're all active, what's common? So we start going ahead and looking at those types of things. And with these two, right now they're probably going out there and they're doing some basic troubleshooting. They probably got vehicles or engines that aren't broke, so they get a good understanding of something that's not broke. So they have basically a standard to kind of go off of, and we're going to go out there and we're going to do the bugging of these things and actually break it for them, stupid gremlins that come through, and now they're going to have to go out there and troubleshoot it. So they can utilize those troubleshooting steps, all the way through. And again, whether it's on a piece of equipment, whether it's on an engine, whether it's on a transmission, doesn't matter. The troubleshooting steps are always going to be the same.
Max, when you think about it in that simplistic way, have to imagine that helps when you are really, really trying to get comfortable in diagnostics.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll admit, overthinking is something that I'm most known for. And when in doubt, I try to go back to those, troubleshooting steps, those simple rules. And I'd say yes, it definitely helps.
Yeah, I think that you're not alone there, right? I think most young technicians probably overthink it. Jacob, I'm not sure if you that's been your experience, but I know when I was first starting off, that was I was very 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 guilty of that.
Yeah, so before I actually started going to school and I was working in the field before going to college, that was a big problem of mine. But as soon as I got into some of these more specified classes here, I've learned that there's no need to overthink it. There's always a resource material somewhere, or it starts to just get more and more familiar. And especially working with Max, sometimes he'll get too fast, he'll get too ahead of him, and he'll be like, "Why isn't this working out?" And I'll have to tell him like that you're going too fast. You missed this step right here, just this one little step, but it gave you the wrong output. And I'll tell him to go back, and I'll work through with him, and then he'll do the same thing with me every once in a while. So it's really
That's
just paying attention to the small things and working slow and not trying to jump ahead to what you think it is.
how hard is it to be patient with yourself? I know when I was a young tech, that was maybe one of the things that I was most frustrated with was if I didn't get it like this, right? Like if I didn't understand the system right away, or if I didn't solve the problem right away, I would become instantly frustrated. And so I'm curious with the two of you if you see something similar to that in yourselves, or maybe you've grown and that's not as big of an issue. But I know that was definitely one of my major faults as a young technician.
Yeah, what I've been told was if you get down that road, just to step back and try to process what you're doing, and then try stepping back in with a better amount of patience. At least that's what I've been told, and it's been working.
Yeah, for me, like I every once in a while, once a month, once twice a month, I'll get that one job and I just can't figure out what the problem is, and I'll be working on it for a solid 4 or 5 hours, and my coworker will have to come over to me and be like, "Hey, just go home. We'll look at it tomorrow. Just stop." And it really frustrates me. I hate going home with a problem unsolved.
That's when you wake up at like 3 a.m. You're like, oh, did I check this?
Yeah,
Trying to figure that out. It is one of those things that I think takes some time. I remember when I would go through some level of frustration diagnosing something, and then I would have an experienced tech walk up to me and say, well, you got to get your butt kicked sometimes. That's the only way you're going to learn. And you're like, you're not helping right now. Like
yeah.
the last thing I want to do is keep beating myself up over this thing. But it does take time and experience. And Tom, I want to go back to you with my next question, which is around confidence and young technicians building confidence and the challenges with that, because I do see a lot of young techs that will beat themselves up and almost to the point to where they leave the industry because of it, right? Maybe you lose that confidence and you're not feeling great about yourself. Uh, what advice would you have in that regard to try and get that confidence up and really think that, hey, you know what, this problem, I'm going to solve it?
Well, I think, especially as young students coming in, and again, it comes right back to this maturity level, you know, that you had asked earlier. I think the more mature students coming back have got a little bit more confidence just due to the fact that they have that life experience behind them. And so they can be in those pressure situations. Someone who's young coming out of high school hasn't had that yet. So now you're putting them in a pressure situation. And yeah, it might rock their confidence a little bit. It might rock their frustrations quite a bit. And I remember coming into this industry, I had this chip in my shoulder because I thought I was pretty good, and I did really well in school. And I was one of the top kids in our class, and I was pretty happy about that. And I got my first job, and I'm kind of walking around, like I said, with this big chip on my shoulder. And then I had a couple of very experienced technicians knock that chip totally off my shoulder. I walked away with my tail between my legs. And, I don't want to say everybody has a right to fail, but sometimes failure actually can help you. And yeah, these experienced techs, they didn't have the time of day for me. They knocked that chip off my shoulder, knocked me down to my size of where I actually was. But the nice thing, what I remember about them, is they didn't just leave me there. They picked me back, picked me up, dusted me off, and says, "All right, now, what I want you to do is I want you to keep your mouth closed and keep your ears open. Listen to what I have to say." And they turned around and they helped me. And when you take a look at these young students, yeah, a lot of these students in here, sometimes you try to give them guidance, as much guidance as you can, but sometimes you just have to turn around and let them make a mistake and rock their confidence. Because sometimes they come in here with an ego that is pretty large. And as they walk into that door, and maybe their ego can't fit through the door, but they walk in with an ego pretty large, and then once that confidence gets shaken a little bit, then it's kind of like, all right, now listen. Now, on the other hand, you have that student that comes in that's extremely timid and really has a problem with the confidence, and they don't want to get in and try things because they're afraid of failure. Those are the ones that you really need to kind of work with them and guidance and stuff like that. But what's great about this particular industry is, okay, maybe this individual with their confidence, they might not have what it takes to really be a technician. Even though that might be their dream, it might be a technician. But then we can turn around, we can guide them and say, you know what? Going through this program will also help you be a salesman. Whether it's used trucks, used equipment, new equipment, a parts manager, working in warranty. There's still so many different avenues within this industry that we need, that again, this industry isn't just screaming for techs. It is screaming for everybody within this industry to make this industry run. And these might be other avenues. And boy, what a great parts person to go in there that knows the background of a vehicle or a piece of equipment and has that understanding. So when Mr. Customer or Mr. Technician comes in and asks for that part, they have an idea what they're talking about and what it actually does. So there are other avenues for these kids that have that confidence rocked. We try giving as much guidance as possible, but sometimes the guidance might be, you know what? We want you to stay in this career, but maybe being a technician might not it. Let's stay in the career and let's move to a different path. And that usually works for a lot of people.
I was one of those people, right? Like I joke about it all the time. I was a terrible technician, and still had the technical background enough to be able to be dangerous, and it led to other paths in my career. But for those of you that are listening out there that are maybe shaken by that a little bit, I think there's a lot of examples of people that still ended up being successful even though it wasn't as a technician. Now, I think from my perspective, it gave me a whole different respect for technicians and what they do, because it takes some talent, right? It takes some mental fortitude to be able to tough out some of these tough things. And you had mentioned, Tom, the need to kind of get your butt kicked a little bit and get humbled, or maybe the opposite, and you have that kid that just doesn't have the confidence. How early are you able to tell when somebody comes into a program kind of where they're going to stand, and has your intuition ever been wrong?
Usually when you have students come in, probably within the first month or so, you could pretty much tell, which students definitely have a lot of confidence, which students have the experience, which students think they have the experience, but in reality do not. So you can tell probably within the month. But here's the thing, and I'm coming back to maturity again, is that there were students that we've had, in all of our teaching careers here. There were students that you just absolutely just shook your head and say, I cannot believe that this student went through this program and passed, and it's just kind of like, wow, I am just absolutely shocked that they passed the program. I just hope that they turn out to be something fantastic in this industry. And now these particular individuals who at school, okay, they weren't the best students. And we even kind of rolled our eyes sometimes and saying, are you sure you really want to be in this career? These are the students right now that are running shops. They're on our advisory committee right now. And we are just, are you sure you're the same individual you were in school? Because you're not now. What happened to them? They grew up. they got mature. And maybe during that time frame, they got their butt kicked. Maybe in that time frame, they said, you know what, I realize now, kind of like yourself, I realize now that, hey, maybe a technician isn't, but, I have a great way of connecting with people. And maybe my job is better managing than it is actually wrenching. And I can still be within this industry. And they're happy where they're at. And man, the success rate of seeing that, I am extremely happy of all these individuals who we've seen and talked to, and former students and stuff like that. And it's kind of like looking where they were when they left school and looking where they are now in their careers. It's fantastic to see that growth.
That's so cool. And I totally agree. I think for any, not only young people, but experienced people, understanding what you're good at and understanding what you're bad at, and knowing that there are very, very, very few people that are good at everything, and being okay with that is really hard to come to terms with at times. But the faster you can come to terms with that, the faster you can work on your strengths and get yourself in your comfort zone and really excel. And I think that's really key advice. Now,
technicians, have you checked out WrenchWay yet? WrenchWay is a free online community for automotive and diesel professionals. Whether you're looking for a job or not, WrenchWay makes it easy to explore new opportunities, stay up to date on what's going on with the auto diesel community in your area, and help improve and promote the technician profession. Check out all the job details you care about before you apply or interview with WrenchWay top shops. Open to new job opportunities but don't want to apply yet? Create an anonymous reverse job post and let shops reach out to you. See what's going on in the industry and in your area through WrenchWay Shop Talk. Join the WrenchWay online community for free by visiting WrenchWay.com or by downloading the WrenchWay mobile app. Links are in the show notes.
Now, I do want to transition back to Max and Jacob here for a minute. And I want to talk about kind of the future of the industry and what you guys see as young people in the industry. But before I do that, I do want to ask, what was it that drove you to be in the industry? Max, even with you, growing up in a shop, it's not a given that you're going to work on trucks, right? There are probably other opportunities or other things that might be interesting to you. But was it an automatic thing like, hey, I'm going into this regardless?
No, it wasn't. Dad told me straight up front, this doesn't have to be a for sure thing. It's totally up to you. Just me sticking around, working at the family shop, you learn a thing or two, and it's great. And I was informed that they made a new law for obtaining a commercial driver's license. My senior year, I ended up getting it, and I learned that, hey, driving trucks is pretty cool. I want to know more about this. So this program was definitely a great opportunity for me to learn more and know how stuff works, because I like to know how things work. Excuse me.
Yeah. And Jacob, how about you?
So I grew up on a farm. I was always around heavy equipment, large machinery, and we were always taught that it's better to fix it than to just buy a new one. You just can't go around replacing everything. And I got my first truck just like every other kid. You love to fix everything on it, change out parts, figure out what you can do with it. And then I go into the military. I'm driving this heavy equipment, actually working with it, seeing what it can do. And you learn that you might not like driving it for 12 hours a day, but fixing it's pretty fun. So after I got back out into the civilian sector, and that job that I had lined up kind of fell out, but that was okay because it gave me that opportunity to switch back into a field that I thought that I would enjoy and learn more about. And after doing that for about 6 months, I figured out that I could probably make this into a career, and decided that it was time to actually try to go to school. And I haven't regretted it since.
I'm going to stick with you here, Jake, on this. One of the things that I get very concerned about with our industry, I don't see it quite as much on the diesel side as I do the automotive side, but some of our best technicians in the industry maybe talking down about the industry or not saying that it's a great place to be. with that being said, do you have worries about the future of the diesel industry as you're entering your career on this side? Any concerns that you might have?
So I'm thinking that one of the main reasons that happens is that as these older technicians are getting ready to leave the industry, things are switching more to electronic controls. Everything's controlled over a CAN bus. And in the automotive industry, that's been in there. So the people that are getting out right now, all they knew was before electronic engines, and they had to deal with all of the brand new technology that came with that. And the reason that you're not seeing that issue in the heavy duty machinery as much is that people are used to seeing this on their automobiles. There's still going to be the same problems as there is with anything implementing a new system into heavy equipment, but people are more used to the change. They have experience with it. They know it's not brand new technology, and I don't feel like there's going to be any problem finding more technicians to come in. I know that there's a problem trying to get them to come to school, but to get people to actually join into the field, there's plenty of people out there that want to work on machinery, and they just need to know that the jobs are out there.
It's a heck of an answer, by the way. That was really good. Max, any concerns that you have about the future of the industry?
Yeah, like coming off of what Jake was saying, a lot more electrical stuff is getting involved with the diesel industry, automotive, more so automotive, because that's been around longer. But I think what people don't know is that there's a huge demand of this, huge, and obviously growing up in a shop, I've known this, but it sucks that some people don't, and I try to inform people as much as I can when they are interested. Um, I'm sorry, I'm blanking here.
No, you're good. Do you have do either, and this I'll put this up for either of you. Do you have concerns about like physical condition after, say, when you're 40, 50 years old, about working in a shop? Is that something that that crosses your mind? Jake, you're shaking your head yes.
Yeah, so as you get older, obviously you're not going to be able to do the same amount of work, and you definitely don't want to make that bottom line technician your entire life career because you're going to get burned out in about 20 years probably. So you always want to be shooting for that next position, and not everybody's going to get to there, but luckily there's advances in science every day, and we have technology to lift heavy things now that we didn't have 50 years ago. But I think as long as you have that initiative to push for the next step in your career, you don't have to turn wrenches every single day for the rest of your life if you don't want to. It can just be a starting point.
Yeah, I think technology is going to open up a whole bunch of other opportunities that might not be here current day. Tom, I get frustrated with shops at times, as you probably are well aware of. Maybe
Yes.
not not maybe painting that picture or that vision for the future, and maybe something as simple as a career path can go a long way for a young person, just to know what their future is going to look like if they work, if they work hard and really put their heart and soul into it. Am I alone there? Am I the only one that's frustrated with that, or what are you seeing out there with the young students once they get into a shop?
Well, what I would like to see, and there are some shops that definitely do this, and I definitely give them kudos that they do this. But I mean, what they need to do is they need to have a sit down with that young, that young technician, and they may ask, what's your 5-year goals? And okay, I applaud them for asking. And but now, if this is that particular student's goal is to go into this or to learn more about that, or maybe change career paths within the same company, we're writing all this stuff down, but we don't help you get to that point. And where a lot of these companies need to do is they need to kind of take a look at their workforce and invest in their workforce and say, okay, well, we want to make an investment into you. Now, I do understand coming in as a young technician, you want to give them time to see, hey, is this particular individual a person that I want to make that investment in? And that I completely understand. But if this person is someone who you want to make that investment in, and that particular person is being loyal to your company. I think what we need to do here as this industry, because the baby boomers are pretty much starting to almost be gone. The Gen Xers are going to start retiring here pretty soon, and the supply and demand right now, as far as supply and demand, there's a huge demand and not a lot of supply of technicians coming into this industry. And it's not just technicians, it's other people within the industry, like we talked about before, sales and parts, and all of this is still part of this industry. And we don't have a lot of supply coming in. And we should be screaming at the top of our lungs from the highest mountain peak of how well it is to be in this type of industry and what type of work environment this is. But we need to also change a few things in our industry that have been, what I call these bygones. Let bygones be bygones, and let's make this change to what students really want from, from a place of employment. And right now, a lot of students want some type of path to advancement. That's what they would really, really want. And you can look at all of the data that's out there. That's one of the biggest complaints about these Gen Zers and millennials, is that they want a clear path of how am I going to get advancement. And I don't want to stay a technician all my life. I don't want to change oil the rest of my life. I want to start working on engines. What do I need to do to start working on engines? Not everybody can work on engines, but at least give them an opportunity to say, okay, now here's where we want to take you. Okay, and work with that particular individual and grow that particular individual. And then you're going to have yourself a very good tech. So one that you make the investment in, and continually making the investment in, and continually helping them on that path to get that advancement that they want, is going to be a person that's going to stick with your company. Now, we know too, because of supply and demand, technicians will leave for 50 cents an hour more or $1 an hour more. And they have no problem going from one place to another for that particular pay raise. So if you're making these investments, and I do understand that making an investment is, expensive, and it's an investment on your, in your particular company, but you also need to compensate that technician while they're moving up through this advancement, especially if they are making money for the organization and their return on investment has actually been proven. You need to help compensate that individual to keep that individual there. We need loyalty, and people are there that want to be loyal. People don't want to jump around. I can guarantee you that. People don't want to jump around. They want to stay at a location. It's a pain in the butt packing up your toolbox and moving to a different location. But they'll do it. And everybody's saying, well, why? And I applaud these dealerships that put these fancy places up. I applaud them because, hey, I've worked in very dark, dingy locations and stuff like that. I have done that. And yeah, it is nice to have clean floors, good lighting, good tooling, and, a place to be proud of actually going to work. But on the other hand, that facility doesn't put food on my table, doesn't pay my bills, doesn't, put my kids through college. So having a nice place to work is great. Don't get me wrong. It is great. I love it. But I still need, for me, so I can actually sustain a life that I want to live. And that does mean some compensation. So there is that balance that you have to have. And, but right now, again, what I've been hearing and what all of the data has been showing me as far as this younger generation, they want some type of clear path to advancement. And I think that's what they'll be happy with too, if you can give them that clear path and actually work with them on that clear path. Now, it might not be exactly what they want, but at least, have that opportunity to give them that clear path forward.
Yeah, and communicate it with them. Talk, understand what their goals and aspirations are, and help them get there, because that will help paint that path. That's going to help make sure everybody's rowing in the same direction. And the more you can have that really good proactive conversation with them, the less reactive you're going to be when they come to you and say, hey, they're leaving and they're going to go down the road for that $1 an hour. So just proactive communication is very, very difficult, but very, very important. One thing I did want to talk about is patience. And I think when we talk about patience in our industry, I think there's maybe a shortage of patience on both sides, right? From the technician side and the shop side. And when I say that, I think a lot of times shops expect their technicians to come right out of school and produce right off the bat. And all other times, maybe on the technician side, they expect to advance really, really fast. And maybe their skill level isn't there yet, even though maybe they have that confidence. I've been that person where I'm like, hey, I'm doing all this stuff and I feel like I should be, moved up the chain, but in reality, I probably wasn't ready. So, Tom, I'll stick with you here on this, but the patience needed on both sides, I feel like needs to grow a little bit, right? We need to be a little bit more patient with our young people as they get into the industry. And techs, you got to be a little more patient with the shops as they're trying to work you up through that career path.
No, I agree completely on that. I think first of all, patience on the shop side of things. Here at the college, yes, we've got a huge advisory committee. Our advisory committee is advising us as far as our curriculum is concerned. You got to understand most of these colleges throughout the country, they're pretty much credit tight, and we're to a point where we really can't, if we're going to add something in our curriculum, we have to take something away. And if we do keep adding things into our curriculum, now the time, either we take something away and give it the proper amount of time, or what we end up doing is we have to cut time out of other, subjects and not give enough matter to the actual subject that really needs to be done. So I know that all these shops will want to have a technician that rolls in here, and especially coming out of school, well, you learn this and you learn this and you learn this, you should be able to produce right away. We've got some very inexperienced individuals. Now, our program is very successful because we also incur internships. And what's nice specifically in our area over here is that almost every single one of our students are in the industry working right now, and they could be in this industry if they want to. Now, we do have some farm kids that want to go back on the farm, which is great. They're still working on the equipment. But if every single student want to work in the industry, they will have a job right now while they're going to school. So our area right here in the Madison area is great. They've worked with us. They're very active within our program as far as our advisory committee, so they understand it. They get it. But when you do get that shop that, hey, I expect this out of this individual. You got to remember, this is an entry level, or we're just scratching the surface. School is not experience. School is an introduction. And that's the biggest thing. They still need to be on the job and gaining the experience. And that's going to take time. Now, on the student side of thing, I think a lot of it, and I look at other programs and stuff throughout the country, you got to actually be reality and tell these students true reality. Just because you are such and such a grad doesn't mean that you can go out there and demand the highest dollar an hour that you can in the shop. Just because I went to this school and I'm a grad of that school. Well, I'm sorry. What you need to do is you need to go out in the shop and you need to prove yourself. Just like everything, you do need to prove yourself. So if you want that top dollar, what is it going to take for you as a student to get that top dollar? Which means you need to be there every single day, probably work overtime, probably make a lot of sacrifices in your life to prove to that particular individual, prove to your employer, hey, I am worth that money. And it may not happen right away, but you will grow a lot faster. And you have to understand that, okay, like we talked about before with these career paths, you lay out this nice career path. Let's have clear expectations between each of you to say, okay, by this point here, I want to be at this point in my career. At this time, I want to be at this point in my career. So both of you agree on an actual time frame, so when you are moving forward, you can kind of expect these things. And if it doesn't happen, there is actually an expectation exchange of why it didn't happen. So again, like you said before too, Jay, is it should be clear communication. But you're right on the patient side of things. It's going to take time on both sides.
Jacob, do you hear that at all? Maybe, or have you experienced that where you feel maybe that pressure coming out of school to perform right away? And I don't want to imply that you have. It's more just asking if you talk to the other students and maybe you get that feel, or if it's more just, hey, you know what, they're letting us grow a little bit here.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's always pressure in the industry. I know in my shop personally, in a lot of shops, there's a large age gap or experience gap. You'll have these guys that they worked there for maybe 2 years, and then there's a gap all the way up until the guys that worked there for 20 years. And the guys working 2 years expect that their next promotion is to match the guy that's worked there for 20 years. And they're surprised when they're looked at and they're saying, no, you still got some time before we're even going to look at you. And we went to a shop tour yesterday, and our instructor asked the person giving the tour, he's like, what's the shop looking like for technicians that have been working there 5 to 7 years? And some of the students were like, I've never held a job for 5 to 7 years. What is this even supposed to look like? So it's just one of those things that these people coming out of school, they've never held a job long enough to experience, like, okay, I've had this set of experience and worked here long enough to be able to ask for this amount. They're judging their experience and judging their worth off of what they're doing right now, and not all the experience that they've given to that company. And I think it's just something that they need to pay attention to and really be able to accurately judge themselves.
One bit of advice I give to a lot of young technicians is, if you have to sacrifice a little money up as a young technician to make sure you get in a shop that you get a good mentor for, that's going to pay itself off tenfold over the years, right? If you get in and you find somebody that you relate to and that really takes you under their wing, that to me should be the priority, even over and above the money, right? And on the tech school side, I think we're lucky because we're not going to 4 years of school, so you're not paying for 2 years of additional school. In fact, you're getting paid for 2 years to learn and get better, right? And I think if we can reframe that a little bit in our eyes as tech students, to be able to understand that I'm still learning. I still need to really develop my skill set and get that experience. And they're paying me to do that. If you can have that paradigm shift and then really find that place that treats you well and wants to train you and that you just get along with, I think that can have a huge, huge impact on your life and your happiness over the years to come. Max, we talked about that patience a little bit. You grew up in a shop. How hard is that patience side from a young technician?
Well, when you have your daddy on you, it ain't too easy. But you definitely practice patience. Practice makes perfect, like everyone says, and repetition especially. Just when you're stuck, like I said, just take a step back, take a breath, and usually you will figure it out.
That's just good life advice in general.
Yes.
If you find yourself overwhelmed, just take a step back, take a breather, do something different for a little bit, and it should help you out. Tom, we're closing in on the end of the podcast. I did want to talk about Skills USA, and especially with the two of these guys having involvement in Skills USA. I know Skills USA is very near and dear to your heart, and you've done a lot of great things with the state of Wisconsin as it relates to the diesel competition and to Skills USA as a whole. Talk to us a little bit about Skills USA. I think everybody's got some familiarity with it, but I take a lot of pride in what you've built over the years with Skills USA in Wisconsin, because I do think it's one of the best Skills USA chapters in the nation.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, for those of you who don't know Skills USA is a student-run organization. We're in all 50 states and 3 territories. And, what we do is we actually celebrate and promote skilled occupations, health occupations, leadership occupations. We celebrate those. And what's great about this is we take middle school students, high school students, post-secondary students, college students, and give them the opportunities to showcase their fantastic skills. And I look at it this way when I try to explain, well, what is Skills USA and what do they do? Well, you always have your athletes that go out there and can perform. They go out there, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, volleyball, whatever. You have these great athletes that go out there and perform. They go out there and play games. They win games. They lose games. Eventually, the ultimate goal of them is to get into the tournament, get into their regionals, their sectionals, and then advance into the state tournament. And hopefully, if you're lucky enough, come home with a state title. And that says something for your school. Not everybody's going to be an athlete. They're not. So why not take an individual who is great with their hands, great with their minds, and actually put them in a career sense and have them compete against each other in their own career field, and have them go to districts and regionals and then come up into the state to see who is actually the best in the state in this career path. And both of these individuals over here as post-secondary students and as first-year students, last year, both Jake and Max actually competed at the state competition. So we hold our state competition annually somewhere right around April. Last year it was at the end of April. This year it's going to be towards the beginning of April. And what's great about the state competition is that specifically diesel itself, we've got over 30 companies that come in and donate 2 days of their time, 2 days of equipment, 2 days of their own being there, running through all kinds of stations that these students are going, that are competing against under various different types of tasks, anywhere from engines to hydraulics to electrical to air conditioning. And these particular students, they are competing against, specifically like Jake and Max, they're competing against all the other technical colleges throughout the state. Now, what's great about this on the state level is once you qualify, and what I mean by qualify, if you're the gold medalist at the state level, you earn your right then to represent the state of Wisconsin at the National Leadership and Skills Conference, which is held each June in Atlanta. And now you're competing against 40 other states in the same thing. And now you are, instead of having dealerships, like here in Madison, we've got dealerships and we've got some small independent shops and that here, putting on the competition for us. Now we have OEMs. Now we have Caterpillar. We have Freightliner. We have Kenworth. We've got companies like UPS and Penske and FedEx, Cummins engines. I mean, we have major OEMs that are players here. And you get to go down and put yourself to see how well you can compete on a national level. And it kind of says a lot for us at the college level here too, because now it kind of puts our program with other programs throughout the country. And, Madison Area Technical College has been very fortunate over the last, 20 years that we have been very successful in our state competition, and we have sent a lot of people to our national competition. And we've always been very successful in our national competition. We've always been within the top 10, if not within the top 5. So when you start thinking about, as far as a young student, since we're talking about students, where would I want to go and get a great career? Well, here you have raw data that we've got in a head-to-head competition where we're in the top 10 to top 5 range as far as curriculum development and curriculum into this field, because our students are consistently placing that on a national level, against 40 other states, which is great. Now, Jacob, he was successful this past year as in state. He did win the gold medal in state. He did earn his right to go down to the national competition in Atlanta this past June. Now, Jacob was a first-year student, so he had one whole year yet that he hasn't had any experience in. And he went down to a national competition. Now, we didn't fall within that top 5 that we would have liked. And I know Jacob, wished that he would have done a little bit better. But when you say a first-year student competing against 2- and 4-year colleges, because there's a couple 4-year colleges that compete there as well, and earning himself 11th best in the nation, I mean, that's pretty good as a first-year student. Now, we're hoping that both of these individuals, again, compete this year at the state level. And we're hoping that one of these 2 individuals is successful and earning their right to go back to nationals. And I think Jacob wants to redeem himself. So it's not, yeah, it's not going to be, he's not going to be given. He's got to earn that right. But I think he wants to redeem himself there at nationals again and prove to not only himself, but prove to the nation that, Madison Area Technical College is still one of the top schools in the nation. And I think he wants to sit on a stage over there and receive a medal, a national medal. So Skills USA has really helped a lot of these students. Like I mentioned before, these two students are state officers here for our state. They're helping me run the state, and as well as the new state director, Mike, run the state. They're actually on stage during our state conference and actually during opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, and they're actually presenting to their peer group. So they've learned a lot being in those roles. And every single student from middle school all the way up through post-secondary has grown and has really blossomed, should I say, in their career with Skills USA as being part of their career path. So if you take an individual who is in this career and a person who's not only in this career but also part of Skills USA, you can definitely see the difference in those individuals. The ones with Skills USA, being members of Skills USA, definitely have got more of that leadership skills, more of that personality that industry is looking for or employers are looking for.
Jacob, I'll speak on behalf of all of the advisory committee, and really just as somebody that's been really close with the program there for a long time, and that we're really proud of that, right? You winning the state competition and going to nationals, and for both of you to be involved in really doing something that's over and above what your school calls upon you for. Is something that I wear a lot of pride in when I talk with people in industry, and I do think it really puts MATC in a different light, right? And you guys are what makes it that. So, an absolute privilege to have the three of you on today. Can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your time and everything you're doing to make the industry better, make the school better, and really just hopefully. Keep helping us kind of push this thing forward, right? So thank you so much, guys. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. I mean, it's you and I have been dear friends for a long, long time, and the success that you've had with WrenchWay here has been phenomenal. And thank you for allowing us to be on here. And you can always have us on anytime. We'd love to be on here.
I'm going to take you back up on that. Yeah. We'll check in the following years to see how the career progress has gone with the guys here. So thank you guys, much appreciated.
Thanks, Jay.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.